Many people struggle to accept the truth of the miracles in the Gospels. They can seem implausible and very remote from the modern world. C.S. Lewis's take on miracles is characteristically thought-provoking. He draws on an idea from St. Athanasius, from his work on the Incarnation, as well as the writings of George MacDonald. Lewis's essay Miracles first appeared in The Guardian in 1942 and is reprinted in the C.S. Lewis essay collection edited by Leslie Walmsley. Lewis starts his essay by rejecting the often expressed idea that seeing is believing. He gives the example of a woman he knew who said she saw a ghost. However, she didn't believe in the immortality of the soul before she saw it, and neither did she after she saw it. No doubt she found some other natural explanation to account for her experience. This example, alongside other examples that Lewis gives, show that experience by itself proves nothing. We interpret our experience according to what we believe to be possible. If we don't believe in the supernatural, then we'll find a natural explanation for anything we experience. Lewis builds on this to say that therefore, if miracles were still happening throughout the modern era, we wouldn't realize. The widespread belief in materialism, a philosophy that excludes the existence of the supernatural, would mean that we would find natural explanations for any experience, whether it was actually natural or not. So the fact that miracles aren't widely believed to be taking place, reported or talked about, doesn't prove that they're not happening. And it doesn't prove that they couldn't ever have happened. The second misconception that Lewis takes aim at is the idea that our ancestors believed in miracles because they didn't understand the natural world or the laws of nature. On the contrary, he argues, in order to believe that anything is miraculous, you need an understanding of the stability of the laws of nature. St. Joseph, for example, initially planned to divorce Mary when he found out she was pregnant, precisely because he knew enough biology to understand how pregnancies normally come about. When he later accepted it as a miracle, it was his understanding of the laws of nature that made him interpret it as miraculous. Likewise, when the disciples saw Christ walking on the water, they were frightened, precisely because they knew enough of the laws of nature to know that this shouldn't normally happen. Lewis concludes that to believe a miracle has taken place, you need to believe in two other things first. These are the predictability of nature and the existence of the supernatural. In the next stage of his argument, Lewis posits that a lot of the skepticism towards miracles is not based on the complete rejection of the possibility of the existence of the supernatural, but two other reasons. First, he talks about something like an aesthetic dislike or distaste for the idea of miracles on account of them seeming arbitrary, theatrical, or meaningless interruptions of the order of nature. I personally sympathize with this position. I've often wondered, if God created nature operating according to fixed and predictable laws, why would he have been so ready to subvert them? The miracles sometimes appear to have a jarring discontinuity with how the world normally works, and can look almost juvenile. The second reason Lewis gives as a possible reason why people reject the possibility of miracles is that they confuse the laws of nature with the laws of thought or logic, and conclude that the suspension of the laws of nature is a kind of contradiction in terms, a logical impossibility, so couldn't ever happen on that account. First, Lewis addresses the idea that miracles are arbitrary, theatrical, and meaningless. He argues, building on Athanasius, that if we look closely, we can see that they aren't arbitrary or meaningless at all. Whilst the most obvious reason for the miracles, to prove that Christ is God, is still important, Lewis argues that this is only half of their meaning. They are, in fact, smaller, sped-up reenactments of the ways that God is continually working through all of creation. Why would the miracles mirror God's normal participation in nature? Lewis argues that they're helping us with a blind spot. God's continual activity in creation is hard for us to see, so the miracles of Christ, happening on a smaller scale and in a shorter time frame, give us a way in to understanding the bigger, wholesale activity of God. They let us see the incarnate God, Jesus Christ, use personal power on a small scale to help us recognize that the power that animates all of nature is also personal in origin. It comes from God. He calls the miracles a retelling in small letters of the very same story that's written across the whole world in letters too large for some of us to see. Lewis gives examples based on the main miracles of Jesus in the Gospels. I'm not going to go through all of them here, but if you are interested in this idea, then I would highly recommend getting a copy of the article for yourself to read in its entirety. For example, in the normal course of nature, God creates vines and teaches them to draw water up through their roots, creating fruit containing juice that can be fermented into wine. We might normally fail to see the work of God in all this, but the miracle of Jesus at Cana, when he turned water into wine then and there in jars, puts the action of God into terms that our limited intellects can grasp on a scale that we recognize. And every year God turns a little corn into a lot of corn in the fields, as farmers sow their seeds and get back many times more than what they put in. The close-up, miniaturized version of this is the feeding of the 5,000, where a little bread was made into a lot of bread right under the noses of the people who were sharing it out. And the miracles of healing are similar. Whilst the actions of doctors obviously help our bodies to heal, really the body is healing itself, Lewis argues. This is shown by the fact that no dressings or medicine could make the skin heal on a corpse. The body is healing itself, or we could say that God is healing us through our bodies. This is the wholesale action of God that we struggle to perceive in our day-to-day lives. But the way in which Jesus healed people in an instant helps us to remember that God heals people continually, every day. But there's another class of miracles that Lewis talks about that don't represent activity that God continually performs in creation now, but foretell in a small way what he's going to do in the future. Again, the miracles are miniature representations, as, for example, they do for one person what God will one day do for all people. For example, he raised himself from the dead as a prefiguration of what he was going to do for all people in the future. Likewise, the beauty that Jesus' human form took on during the Transfiguration and his walking on water are signs of what our human forms will be like when we, in Lewis's words, are truly waked by God. The same goes for some other features of Jesus' appearance after the resurrection. The people who knew him best frequently didn't recognize him. Lewis speculates that his relationship with the physical world was also different, as he seemed to move in and out of rooms with more ease than normal. However, he seemed at pains to demonstrate that he wasn't a ghost, as he showed when he ate with his friends. These other features too are giving us hints about what will be universally true about human bodies after God brings us back from the dead. Towards the end of his essay, Lewis turns to the group of people who assume that anything that contradicts the laws of nature automatically contradicts the laws of logic or thought, so a miracle is logically impossible. He counters this perspective by arguing that nature itself is inexplicable. To explain any of the working of nature, you take certain facts about the working of the universe as a given. Nature itself as a whole is not natural. Like a miracle, nature is a full stop to our understanding. Behind any explanation of any natural processes, there will always be brute facts that can't be explained, only accepted. I've shortened Lewis's argument a lot for the sake of this video, and I would encourage everyone to read it in full. The reference for where it's published is below. I'm going to be putting out videos like this every week or so please do subscribe if you want to be notified when that happens. Thanks for watching.